honestly what we had. We had old ones because they were cheap,
Yeah.
and my dad would work on it himself. So that's kind of how it all started. And my first car, I was reading a muscle car magazine. My dad was into the muscle cars, the '60s muscle cars, and I was reading a muscle car magazine, and I see this '67 to '69 Barracuda, and I was like, oh man, I'd love to have one of these. So my dad tells me, well, I know where there's one of those. Well, it was a Barracuda,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a '67 to '69. It was a '66.
Okay.
It was horrible green. Um, it had a colony of ants in the trunk. They used it to haul wood up to their house.
Is that the one that had the big back glass in it?
Back window, yep.
Yeah,
Huge
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. And they were using that to haul wood in?
Yep, because the back seat would lay down, so they'd throw it in.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know all of this until after I had already bought the car. So my dad put $150 down because there was an old faded for sale sign in it. I could actually, if anybody came here, I could take you right to this spot. There's the wood pile still there, and there's a shed now where the Barracuda used to sit. And so he put $150 down to hold this thing. And so I asked my mom if I could take the money out of my savings account, and she reluctantly agreed. We went over, and I paid this lady, and I was so excited. And I walked down there, and I went, ugh, because it was terrible. I wanted my money back so bad. It was terrible. He said it ran, and had no brakes. So what my dad did is my mom and dad went over there like the next weekend, or like that later that week or that weekend, and my dad cut the brake lines and twisted them around the vice grip and bled the front brakes so he could drive it home.
Yeah.
And he drove it home. Had the Commando 273 in it, so it was the biggest and most horsepower you could get in '66.
Yeah.
So it was one of 7,500 with that engine that wasn't a Formula S. The Formula S was one of 3,500. So, and they only made like 24 to 27,000, somewhere in there in '66 because it was a 1 year only body style. And I had that car for 21 years.
Oh my.
Yeah. And I didn't have the money to redo it from when we got it home. I was 13 when I got it, and I was broke, going to college and stuff. So I had to sit, and I drove it to high school, and I drove it a lot, and then things started needing to be done, and I didn't have the money, so I stored it for a better part of 10 years, and then I started, and I was in a better position, so I got it back on the road, and well, that's when things started to, after having been redone 15 years prior, rust starts happening and bubbles are happening and all these things, and then there was just, and I mean, I couldn't find parts for it when it was 23 when I bought it, and when it was in its 40s by the time I could redo it.
Yeah.
I really couldn't find parts. So I ended up, I got a friend of mine owned a body shop, and he was going to give me friend prices on it, and he said it was going to cost me anywhere between $5,000 to $8,000 to redo the body, just the body.
Yeah.
And that didn't count the interior or some of the other issues that had come along, and so reluctantly I sold it because I couldn't just let it fall apart.
Yeah.
So I then got a '66 Mustang, and I was mad at it, and I didn't drive. I drove it home, and I parked it I didn't look at it or drive it for a week.
Yeah.
It was like, you're not my Barracuda. But then I started driving it. So it all started with my dad and having old stuff because that's what we had.
Right.
And to just saying I would like to have something like this. And he goes, well, I know where there is one. And I'll tell you, if I still had that car, actually, even if I saw the car, I could tell you where I got, it had 3 different front bumpers on it in its life because we'd find that was a little less bent or the chrome was better.
Yeah.
It's 2 different rear bumpers. We got the driver's quarter panel out of a junkyard and they just torch cut it right by the window. So we got a whole bunch of extra metal. The front fenders and hood were off of a Valiant station wagon. I got some NOS 73 Barracuda hubcaps for $10 at a swap meet.
Right.
I could have tell you where I got everything for it. And, it was kind of, I'd love to have it, have it back and all that. And I thought, well, and then I read this article in Rat Rod magazine. It kind of, the guy was talking, because that was my first car that I ever really built. Because it was terrible.
Yeah.
So, we stripped that old nasty paint off with aircraft stripper in the driveway. So,
Right.
and before I went to the body shop. So my dad kept track of how much spent, and then I was, to pay him back. Well, when I graduated, I got the title signed and the keys in an envelope with a paid in full kind of thing because I did well in school. So
yeah. Now, what was you didn't say, you said you paid 150 down. What was the total cost of the car?
$500.
$500.
Yep. And
You said they had the slant 6 in it?
Commando 273. So the solid lifters, 10.5 to 1 compression, 4-barrel, cast iron, everything that weighed 500 pounds. It was just, and I ended up replacing the engine in it with a 340. Chris from Whiskey Dents asked me if I'm going to work on something or just sit here. I'm in my recliner. I'm going to sit here, man.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I would love to have another one, and I've decided that I will have another one. I know where there's a couple.